Well, I have to admit I'm working under very tight tolerances here. This neck is already at the finished width that I want right here at the 12th fret on the width. So I got to be sure I don't cut anything back here, you know, on the width wise. So up here on the front end, it's exactly on what I want. And it's smooth on both sides, so we're probably fine. I'm talking in the 1,000th of an inch. We're fine right now to the 1,000th. So, you know, if you took off a few thousandths one way or the other, it's not going to matter because that's only the width of a hair, you know, so it's not a big deal. But right now, I just want to be careful and keep that in my mind that I don't want to make any mistakes that screw this area up right here because I don't have anything to play with right here. But down here we should be plenty wide, so we're going to try to find the width here, and then we'll draw some lines up here, and we'll stay away from the 12th fret there. We'll bring our angle back maybe an inch or so that we know we're going to have plenty of width. We know that this needs to be 1 11/16 up here at this end. Now, 1 11/16 goes to decimal at 1.6875. So I've got my 1.687 there, and the half of 10 thousandths of an inch I'm not worried about. But anyway, so now the problem is, how do you center it? We could spend some time and figure out a way to center it here. I've already cut my slot. Had I not cut the slot, it would have been a little bit easier. But because the slot's there, I think maybe the best way to just do this will just be to do some math. So if we know we want to be at 1.687 there, then let's see how wide the slot is first. And we can measure that in thousandths right here at the place where it matters. It's right at 200 thousandths of an inch, so 0.200. So there's a couple of different ways I could do this, but I chose to just use math. I don't do math on camera because I'm not that good at it. I understand math real well, but I'm just not that fast in my head with it. So we wanted this to be 1.687. So what I did was I found the width of this deal here, this slot, which is 200 thousandths, and I just took the 1.687, divided it by 2, which came out to 0.8435. Then I took half of this slot and minused it from that, which is 100 thousandths, and it came out to 0.7435. So I measured, so it's very easy to get that exact number here. So I got that number here, and then I just scribed the line here and scribed the line there, and now I'm in the process of drawing a pencil line from the 12th fret to here, and I'll do that same thing here on this side. So get on my pencil line, get on my 12th fret mark there. Actually, I'm going all the way to the very end. Just trying to make sure it doesn't move. Got a very sharp pencil, by the way, here. I like to really work on these fine details with sharp pencils. So there's our lines drawn in that I think you can see. Perfectly centered. Now, just as a sanity check, if I check the pencil marks, the full width here, it should come out to my number, or very close. Okay, I said it needed to be 1.687. I got 1.693, so, you know, I'm over by, 6 thousandths of an inch, which is, again, a human hair. So the math works really good, and, this gives you very good accuracy versus, if you're just trying to do it with a ruler and millimeters and stuff, I mean, you can be pretty darn accurate, don't get me wrong. But you can't be as accurate as this. I mean, you just can't. So when you really want to get down to very detailed, accurate woodworking, I highly recommend a caliper. Now this one's a digital one. It's much easier for most people to read. I actually prefer the dial calipers. I'm used to using those, but a friend sent this one to me, and I like to use it, and it's real good when you have to do math because the numbers are right there. So it's real easy for when you're doing math. So anyway, but if you've never used a caliper, I'd recommend the digital kind like this. I'm just using the traditional Martin shape peg head. That's what I'm planning on here. I've got this pattern drawn already with a center line that you probably can't see. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and darken that in because it's pencil and it's faded over time. So there's the center line now. And I can line my center up on there, line my edge of my peg head up there, and get it on the center down here. So we're pretty good shape there. Now we just got to solve that out. I almost got ahead of myself and cut out the peg head shape before putting on a veneer. I've decided to go with the Paduk veneer since a lot of you mentioned that in the prior video. So, and I think the Paduk will be real nice and tied into the body and everything. So that's what we're going to go with. So I'm going to glue that on first and clamp that up, and then we'll cut out the rest of the profile of the neck. I'm trying to draw in the dovetail design on the end here so that we can cut that. And I've got the length down this way marked, and I've got the width at the top marked, and I'm going to just use the width of my inlay pieces here as my bottom width. You know, you can make this almost any size or shape you want, and it would probably be fine. So we're just going to come around like that with the router. I think that's going to work fine. I'm just thinking it through. I've got the pencil mark there, and what I'm going to do, believe it or not, I'm going to do this by hand routing. And you know, I wouldn't advise this if you weren't pretty good with your router. And I'm not saying I'm that good with my router, actually. What I'm saying is I kind of understand what I want to get accomplished here, and I'm not trying to cut a perfect dovetail yet. I'm just trying to get rid of most of the wood, and I'll have to get my light where I can see. My goal is to two things: keep the router from doing this, you know, keep it flat. And the other thing would be to not let the cutter go into the line, to stay on that side of the line. As long as I don't cut into the line, then, you know, nothing could really go wrong, you know, as long as I don't tilt it or something. That's working well. There's more dust and debris going on than I really care to mention. So I'm going to, I've got my goggles on, but I'm going to get some better goggles and go ahead and get my breathing apparatus on, and then we'll finish this up. Well, actually that was pretty easy. Wasn't much to that. You can see the line's pretty darn straight, I think. And I don't know if you can see my pencil line, but my pencil line is all still there, but just barely. So we didn't really cut into the pencil line. Now we're going to flip this thing around, I guess, where I can get to it a little easier, because I need to be able to see my lines better, and I can see them better from the far side. The other problem I'll have is now I won't have as big a shelf to set the router on, so I'm going to have to be very careful of that, and it could tilt, tip or something on me, and I hope not, but that's what I'm going to have to be very careful of, and try to keep it flat. I think it'll be okay, but it's going to be a tough one, so here we go. Now that's real nice, except for one problem: it's not deep enough. That's as deep as my cutter would cut. So now I'm going to deepen the cutter, because now the shank would have hit here had I had it any deeper. I had the full face of the cutter was cutting that whole way. So now I'm going to deepen the cutter and just pay attention to what I'm doing and try not to screw it up. That's all it boils down to. I'm going to deepen the cutter to make it 5/8. I would say it's about a 1/2 inch right at the moment. that's good. I don't think I made any mistakes that I can't fix. Actually, I don't think I cut into the line anywhere, so I think we're good. After a 10-minute cleanup of all the shavings and sawdust, as you can see, I'm left with a fairly decent dovetail. It's got to be cleaned up with a chisel, but it'll only take 5 minutes to clean it up and it'll look real good. I think that'll do. I think especially for now, and then we can fine tune it if we need to. Now we're coming to that crucial fit between the dovetail we have in the neck and the dovetail that we have on the body. What I'll be drawing in is the small part of the dovetail. In other words, I'll be measuring this inside edge and drawing that centered up on here, and then when we cut it out, because that small edge is what's going to match here, and when I cut it out, I'm going to of course leave the lines as I always do, which should make it an incredibly tight fit, and it probably won't go all the way in, and then we would be able to do that by hand and work the angles, because you got to worry about this angle, forwards and up and down, if you will, side to side, and you just really have a lot going on there. And obviously the critical angle is the angle from this to here. You want it to be about 1.5 degrees, something like that, or anyway, you want about where the bridge would be down here on the top. You would want a straight edge to come across here and leave about a 1/16 of an inch or a little bit more. And then when you put your fretboard on here and your bridge on here, everything should work out just fine. And it doesn't hurt to test it with a fretboard and a bridge too before you finalize your actual angle, and that's what we'll do. And once again, rather than trying to measure it with a ruler, you can get far more accurate measurements with these calipers, and so that's what I plan to use, is the calipers here. We always have to make sure the calipers are on 0, and then we can slide it in there and test it a couple times. I got the same measurement like 3 times, so it's 1.563. 1.563, so we'll write that down. We're going to go down here. Now this is a little bit more tricky because it rounds off down here. But I'm going to try to establish where the last straight part is. And I may even just put a pencil mark in there about where that last straight mark is right there. And on this side, before it starts to go off on the curve, actually I think it's a little higher up on this side, but we'll just try to mark it in roughly the same place. So I'll take the tips of the calipers, go down to that spot that I marked, and they reach right down in that groove, and it comes out to all 5s. 0.5555, so 0.555, so we'll just call it that. And so that would establish our angle on center. If we had a center line there, and we would this wide at the top and this wide at the bottom. And the other thing is we need to know how far from this end we are on this to get our angle even better. And I'll just go down to that tip right here and measure that where I measured the width before. 2.978 inches. Sorry, my millimeter friends, I don't have all that in my head and converted. Although that actually, 2.978 would be about 75.5 millimeters, because millimeters are on here also, written here in hard numbers. So it's about 75.5 millimeters, looks like. I'll take and right here, I'll just put a little scratch mark right here. Now that's my depth. That's not really the depth, but that's the depth for my angle that I'm measuring from. So I would center off of that line right there for my width down here at this bottom edge. Okay, so I'm going to do some thinking and I'll come up with the numbers here. I'm going to do some math and come up with my marks in the right places here. So for down here, we're at 0.276 off of center. So I just put a little tiny scratch right there, and while I've got it there, I'll mark it. And then the same way off of the center here. It should be right there. And now we need to do the same thing up here. On this end, it's almost 20 millimeters, 0.781 inches. So I'm going to put the calipers right there and mark that little spot. And do the same thing over here. And then what we do is we just take and connect those lines. And now those pencil lines, which are hard to see, but as long as I stay within that, we should be good. Now, the length of this is a little hard to decide. Not really, I guess. If I just take the calipers and measure it, that should, and measure to the bottom of this inside, that should be the length. 3.30 is close enough, and we can just lock it down at that number there. And then there's where I need to stop. That's my bottom line right there. So I don't want to, so my line I should keep my router cutting within those lines. We've got everything set up. It's held in a vise. I've got a bunch of towels around it down there. And the instrument is rough sanded at the moment anyway, so it's the perfect time to do this. I've got the router set at a 1/2 inch deep, and we're just going to route it out by eye just like we did before, and it shouldn't be any problem at all. It should be fairly easy. Well, that looks really good at the moment. The fit isn't legitimate right at the moment, but we're going to fit it anyway, just to see if there's any epic mistakes before we go any deeper. And it looks good. Doesn't have much wiggle. There's a little bit of wiggle to it down here, but that may be to be expected until we get it to full depth. How much deeper do we need to go? Well, enough to make up the difference there. I'm not really sure how to measure that exactly. Let's see if I can get an idea how much deeper we need to go. I would say we need to go 0.186 deeper, which would be a little over 4 millimeters deeper yet. It's apparently not wide enough at the upper end because it's not coming all the way to the bottom. It's not getting bottomed out yet. I'm going to try to get as close to the lines as possible if I'm not already on the lines. Looks like we might be missing the line a little bit up here on this inside edge. So I'm going to see if I can fix that a little bit or brighten that line up where I can see it a little better. This side looks pretty good. Little bit tight right up here on this corner, and I'm going to try to bring those out just a little bit before I go ahead and go deeper. Well, I don't think I showed that, but I cleaned that line up and did another test fit, and it's absolutely tight now. It doesn't wiggle at all. It's not going quite to the bottom yet, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that yet. So now we'll set the depth on the router to the full depth and do it one more time. I think we're just going to clean that up and see how it fits. Now, to fit this neck the rest of the way, I mean, I do it all by hand. It's really a pretty darn good fit already, and we're only about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe not even an 1/8 of an inch from going all the way in. So what I want to do is establish where we're tight, and I do that with this carbon paper. The carbon paper is pretty darn thin, and it fits down in the crack pretty good if you just take your time and wiggle it in there. Of course, if it wrinkles up, it can give you a little bit of a false reading, but not really too bad. I've really had very good luck with it. And so I put it in there and just try to wiggle it around as much as I can. It doesn't wiggle much. And then that gives me an idea of where the tight spots are. You can see the dark there, the dark here. There's nothing on the heel, but there is a little dark there and a little dark here and there. I guess I'm going to take it down to the table and start looking at the neck angle and all that stuff to make sure it's right. Just doing my little test here to see how we're running, and I would say we're running exactly parallel with the top, exactly flat. I mean within, you know, a few thousandths of an inch. I mean, it's that flat. So that's, you know, okay. That's just not where I want to be. I want to have it slightly angled down. And it's no surprise that it's running flat because I cut everything square, and that's the way, you know, you kind of have to do it, really. I mean, you could do it differently, but it's a little bit difficult. So now I'm going to hand fit everything till we get it where it's running at a slight angle, about a 1 degree angle, something like that, or a little more. But before I do that, I think I'm going to try to profile this heel a little more because there's so much wood sticking out here on this heel. I don't think that's going to give me a true measurement. So I want to get this heel profiled a little bit better before I finalize my angle. Probably spend another 30 minutes off camera shaping this neck, and it's getting very, very close now. I'm down to the scraper, although I might be a little premature yet. I may have to do some more filing, but you know, start cleaning it up with the scraper because the scraper is just like sanding it, but yet it takes off a lot more wood. And I'm shaping it and kind of smoothing it all in one motion here with the scraper. The thoughts running through my head are, do I stain this neck dark, or do I leave it light like this? And, you know, in a way, I'm kind of thinking it might look kind of cool to have it a light neck on this dark guitar, you know. So those are my thoughts going through my head now. Just takes time to get down to that last detail. That last detail takes more time than the roughing out. That's looking pretty good. So we're going to stop there for a little while, give it a little rest, because I like to come back to things and I see things that I didn't see before and that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to do. Take a little rest on it and we'll come back. This is a test that I often do, is without looking at that end down there, I look at this and I center it, and then I go down there and look and see if it's on the center, and I would say I'm within a 64th to a 32nd of an inch down there. So it's running perfectly straight, so I couldn't be more pleased with that. Here's a rough idea of what it's going to look like. More than likely we'll go with the ebony. We still got to get the neck angle a little bit like this. It's pretty flat right now, but I want to tilt the peg head down just a little bit more yet. Not very much. I mean, like just a little bit. But we're getting there now where we can do that, I think. When I was working on the body of this guitar, one of the things I remarked about was the grain filler. You all responded with a lot of options and a lot of ideas, most of which I had already tried, or tried many, many times, in fact. But this particular product I have not tried, this Aqua Coat, and I thought I'd try it. I also I bought some epoxy also, Z-Epoxy I believe it's called, and I'm going to try that down the road. But right now I thought this looked like an easy trial, and I thought this would be something that I could do fairly simple. And so that's why I'm trying this. I'm just using a guitar pick to spread it. I just took a thin guitar pick because we're talking such a small area here. And I thought that'd be a perfect applicator. As a matter of fact, they recommend a piece of plastic to apply it. So I thought, what else better to apply it to a guitar peg head than a pick? And it seems like it's working pretty well. It does, you know, you can see the color change instantly as you saw there right on camera. The reason I wanted to fill this grain ahead of doing my inlay is I want this to be a perfectly glass smooth surface so that I can draw the inlay detail in very fine detail to route it out. I don't want to use any filler on this at all if I can avoid it, and because I don't want you to be able to see it. Now that's almost impossible. I know that going in. You know, even a very good inlay person generally has to, they don't admit it, but generally they have to fill something somewhere. So I'm going to just do my best to not have to fill anything. And the odds are I'll fill something, but hopefully it'll be very minimal. And one of the ways I think I can accomplish that is by getting this glass smooth up here first, so that, like when I draw the design on here, I can draw the design in tiny detail and perfect detail, where if it's bumpy and holy, when I start to pencil across there, it's going to be getting in those bumps and holes and make problems for the detail. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So I thought this is a perfect way to try out the new product and a perfect application for it here in addition. Now it says you let this dry 20-30 minutes, you sand it, and you may have to apply it again. That's fine. We're going to give it a shot and see what happens. It does say to squeegee off the excess And I do see some excess there, so I'm going to take this and squeegee it off now. I've cleaned that off. And we'll just squeegee off any excess so that it dries fast. That looks pretty good. Says it dries crystal clear. So far, I can tell you I like the product. If it fills the grain, I'm in love with the product because it's so easy to apply and so easy to, hopefully easy to sand too. And it's water cleanup. It's been about 30 minutes since I applied this. We're in the air conditioning, so it feels really dry. Take a look at it here. I haven't sanded it at all, and you can still see quite a bit of grain in there. At least I can. I was hoping that it would fill it up with one application. I would love to find something that could do that. And in this modern day and age, you would think that would be fairly simple to find. I haven't found it yet. That's crazy. Well, let's sand it. It says to sand it with 320, so I've got some 320 here, and we'll sand it and see what it looks like. So that looks pretty good. It actually does look like it filled most of it, I guess. It's hard to say. It feels pretty smooth. I can still see a spot or two that looks like it's not filled. I don't know. Vote's still out on it, so let's try some more. Go with the next application here and see if we like it better after this next application. I've heard people say you got to go across the grain. Well, all right, I'm going to go across the grain this time. And I've done that many times with other fillers, gone across the grain and only across the grain and only used burlap, and I've tried a million different things. I swear I have. But I have not found one yet that does what I think it should do. And that is fill the doggone grain and fill it on the first try. I don't see why it needs to be a problem to fill it on the first try. You would think with all the modern things we can do, we could certainly fill some dadgum grain on the first try. Doesn't seem like it'd be that hard. In case you're wondering, this pick has been flattened on the one edge. That's what I'm using. There's not much odor to this. What little odor there is, I've definitely smelled it before in some other product. I don't know what it is for sure. Well, that's coated pretty darn well. I'm going to clean off my little squeegee here. Maybe let that set a minute or so to hopefully stick in those pores a little bit better. And we'll, as the directions say, we'll squeegee off the excess. And we'll just go across the grain this time. Okay, we'll let that dry. It looks pretty good. I don't know. Vote's still out on it, but it looks pretty good. We'll give that a 30 or 40 minutes and we'll sand that off. Okay, this has been drying for about 40 minutes now. We're going to sand it back off again. I can remember the last time we scraped it across the grain. I'm not sure that works real well on this big, long, open grain because when you're scraping across it, you're hitting down in those little pits. I mean, ordinarily I understand that because your grain is generally kind of round and a little bit elongated. But this stuff has long, thin grain lines going down through it. So, I don't know. It's just 6 1/2, half dozen in the other. But I will say it does appear to have filled most of it. I don't think it's 100% yet, to be honest. And it just sure seems like by now we would have a filler that you could put on one time and call it good. One of the reasons I don't really like sanding blocks is that they build up like that and make these little hard spots on them. And then that scratches your surface. I prefer to just use the fingers, and keep your fingers moving, you know, and as long as you keep them moving, you won't have any distorted sanding areas. I've been doing it that way for 35 years, and it works perfectly for me. Not to mention, then if there is a spot there that you don't like right there, there's a little dark spot, I can just hit that a little bit harder, where it's harder to do that with the sanding block. But I don't know, guys. I gotta be honest, I don't think that's really doing all it's supposed to do either. It's definitely better than not doing anything. At least I think it is. But we won't know till we apply the lacquer. And I got a feeling that the lacquer is still going to soak in there. It just looks like it to me. It's really sad to me that we can't come up with a better filler. You wouldn't want me to review your filler products at this point unless you have a very good one. Because I don't think any of them work worth a darn.